Can you all hear me? Check, check. All right, good evening, everybody. We're so glad that you're here. Always good to see you and see you visiting with each other and see some new faces as well. So welcome to the gathering. Bridge Life offers this training once a month. We also host a monthly ladies' night out. We have Stew Crew, which is meal delivery, Hammer Time, which are home improvement projects. We partner with some churches to do Parents' Night Out as well, so free date night, anybody? So if you have questions about the other programs that we offer, you can check out bridgealife.com, and there's a drop-down that says Help for Families. I just want to let you guys know, as far as the gathering goes, the next few months, what the plan is. So next month, we're going to be at Oasis Church, which is also in Bradenton. Many of you have been there before. It will actually be on June 19th, so that is the third Monday of the month, which is a little bit different than what we normally have. But during the summer, a lot of churches have VBS and other ways that they're using their buildings, and so we needed to switch our schedule a little bit. So June 19th, you'll see that registration go live within the next couple of days, and it will be linked in an email that you should have received from me a few minutes ago, just with some follow-up information about tonight and what to expect in the future. We are starting the TBRI caregiver training starting in June. We're just going to start kind of chipping away at it. So that was some feedback that you all gave us, is that you really wanted to see the TBRI caregiver training offered in person. And so that is a 40-hour training. And obviously, we just have a couple hours a month, and so we're going to just start building the pieces. And it's not something where you necessarily have to be here for all of it. You'll be able to jump in, but we hope that you can join us for that. Just a reminder for those of you that are here live with us, there's also a virtual option if you ever can't make it to us in person, or if childcare fills up, you can always tune in online as well. In July, we're off. Again, just churches are busy. It's a little bit harder to find a venue this summer in July, so we're just going to give you guys that month off. We have some other things that are happening that month as well. We hope to see you. And then in August, we're back at Oasis. And then September through the end of the year, we're going to be at a Sarasota location. We'll be at Sarasota Baptist. So all of that is in that email. You don't have to remember that. Also at bridgelife.com, there's an online calendar that has all of our events listed. As soon as we know the dates, times, and locations, that's updated. Just wanted to share with you guys, I know a lot of you come in, and we always want our programs to be free and accessible and never any burden to you. But I know a lot of you come in and you'll put $5 in the jar back there, or $20, whatever you have, and we so appreciate that. We have an organizational goal this year to increase our monthly donors, actually to double that. So at the beginning of the year, we had 24 churches and individuals that give to us on a monthly basis, and our goal by the end of the year is to be at 50. So we want to be transparent with you with that. Not that we want anything to ever be a barrier for you to access our services, but if you're used to putting $10 in a month and you'd be willing to set up a recurring donation instead, that would help us reach our goal, and we'd really appreciate that. So that is also linked in the email that we sent you all. I want to introduce one of Bridge Life's new employees, Kaylee, to come on up. She has some exciting news to share with you about a grant that we received. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. Ooh, microphones make me nervous. Okay. So I know most of you, so that's exciting. So I'm Kaylee King. I am now with Bridge Life, and you may have seen on social media or emails, if you got them from me, that we received a grant for Hurricane Ian support. So we have it available. We want to give it out to all of you and anyone else who's in our community. So if you go on the Bridge Life website under financial assistance, there is a specific application for Hurricane Ian. So you can click on that, submit it, it'll come right to me. And if you have any questions on that, just let me know. But it goes for retroactive support too. So if you already made improvements, or your fence fell down and you already paid for the repairs, still submit the application, because we can still help you with that. There's just ways that we can do that. So Jody's going to send the email. It'll have my cell phone number and my email address. You can call or text me or send me an email, whatever's most convenient for you. Any questions now? Or pretty good? Okay. All right. Thank you.
And what's also pretty awesome about that is it can be retroactive. It can also be loss of income and loss of food. So just keep those things in mind if you experience any of those losses. All right, we're excited to have Sean with us tonight from the Florida Center. Anybody feeling tired? Anybody feeling like you just give a lot of yourself all the time? And so when I saw that this was a training that the Florida Center offers, understanding compassion fatigue, I thought we have to have her come and tell us all the things that we need to know about taking care of ourselves. So thanks for joining us, and we're going to always keep it super casual and informal. So if you have questions, feel free to ask those. If you're tuning in online, you can text me. My phone number is at the bottom of that email. You can text me questions, and we'll ask those as well. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, and good evening to all of you. I will tell you that it has been a while because of COVID that I have spoke in person. So you're going to watch me have the little jeebies, but I always feel like it's riding a bike, right? I'll get right on that bike. So my name is Shawn Hoyle. I'm a parent educator. I've been teaching parenting in the community for the last, a lot of years, 21 years. And a year ago, I got the opportunity to expand my mission. And my mission has always been to empower children by empowering parents. And so as I was working for myself for all of those years, and I called good old Christy Skolglin, Dr. Christy Skolglin, and who I've known for about 18 years, and said, Christy, by chance, do you have anything? And there was an opening in the Training Institute. So, we're in the church, but I'll tell you, I just feel like there's sometimes things just align for me. So tonight, so the last year, I've been doing a lot of work, and I'm just kind of finally shifting out of my old role 100% into my new role as getting out there and doing speaking engagements. So you guys are my first run. So thank you for that. So tonight we're going to talk about compassion fatigue, and I put on all of the tables, you all should have a couple of pieces of paper. You really only need to go through them as I go through them. I am going to ask you, just while we're sitting here, if any of you do not get the Training Institute emails to find out when we have trainings, I have a sheet here, and if you pass it along just while we're going along, if you're interested in signing up, please do so I have your name and contact information. So Jody said earlier, how many of you are exhausted? Any of you? Yeah. I can relate with that. Let me get this little clicker here. So we're going to talk about the difference between being exhaustion and what is compassion fatigue. And then I always like to not talk about problems, but I like to talk about solutions, right? I'm a solution-driven person, so we're going to talk about that. Before I go any further, though, I'm going to how many of you are familiar with the Florida Center? I'm interested in seeing how many of you are just absolutely, I have no clue who you are, what you do. Anybody? Okay, so there's one. So I'll just tell you, we have, as you can see here, 8 divisions within the Florida Center. I am the only one that is self-sufficient. I am a one-person department. But the other ones, we have preschool, and we will be enrolling for the fall. So if anybody's interested, we have it's an inclusion school both in Northport and here on 17th Street. We have developmental therapies. We have early childhood mental health. Sorry about that. And so those are people that come in to get their young children diagnosed. The Florida Center specializes in birth to 5, although we go all the way up to 5th grade. So then we also have healthy families. We have early childhood courts. Some of you might be familiar with our services through that, helping with permanency for children in the welfare system. We are the only fetal alcohol spectrum disorder in the state of Florida. We have both a facility here in Sarasota, and then we have a remote location in Orlando. So we used to do 1 clinic a week. I think we now do 3 clinics a week, and sometimes more, just depending on the schedule. And then we have school-based mental health. So for years, we had 2 school-based therapists in every elementary school in Sarasota County. Last year, we got a contract for Manatee County, and so we have contract for 10, and I believe we're almost built up to that. So very exciting. We continue to grow. So little bit I've already given you about myself. I just want to hear some expectations tonight. Is there anybody that came here with, like, I really want to know this? Is there anybody that has something on their agenda that I want to, before I leave today, I want to know the answer to this? Because I will tell you, I don't know all the answers, but I'm really resourceful. Anybody have anything? All right. Oh, good. Thanks, Jody. Yeah.
For me, it's that whole balance of like, so giving of myself, but realizing I have limitations.
That's right.
How can I be super present for my kids,
Yes.
but also be really aware of what capacity I have in other.
Absolutely. I am going to touch on that in a very big way because it's really, for me, we're going to talk about the difference between limits, boundaries, right? And then all of our maybe mistaken beliefs about self-care, what that looks like, as well as for caring for others. So you guys have it on your sheets, the objectives for today. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there because I want to really get to the meat of the things. And we're going to first talk about what is compassion fatigue. So how do we get there? I want to talk about that first. How do we get to compassion fatigue? Compassion fatigue is we're going to see the definition in a minute, but it's absolutely exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally. You no longer have the capacity to care about another person. You may know how to care for them, but that internal feeling isn't there. You've done it too long. You haven't done self-care. That's what will happen. So I'm going to give you really the why it is so important that you educate yourself and get some practices. So I want to talk about what gets us there. And I put up here some words: trauma, stress, toxic stress, complex trauma, chronic pain and stress, adversity, and then good old ACEs. Are all of you familiar with ACEs? By chance? Hopefully you are. If you're not, I will come back and happily do a program on, I like to talk about the building resiliency, but I'll go through the ACEs portion. So here's the deal. What I know is if you're anything like me, you read those words and you say, I know what that is. But do you? Do you really know what the difference is in the definitions of each one of those? So me being who I am, I pulled up the definitions. I know, and it's a lot of words, and it's written down there, but I just want you all to think about, and I want you, if you can, to imagine if your minds were balloons, that I'm not here to clear out the air. I want to expand what you already know. All right, and if you can put aside what you think you know, it leaves capacity to grow even more. So adversity is a state or instance of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. I bet each one of those children, right, that you have come across has had adversity. The stress is that state of worry and mental tension that's caused from that difficult situation, whereas chronic stress is it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It just keeps on and on. But toxic stress is when, because stress can actually be good. You all know that, right? Stress can get us to move, to make us make different decisions. There can be some really good stress. But I'm talking about the ones that now negatively affect us in our being, in our mental state, and that long-term impacts our physical state. Toxic stress is this, how I always say it is, it's like having your foot on the pedal of the car at the highest speed until the car dies, right? We all know it can't keep going that length forever. There's going to be a time where that car is no longer going to be able to handle that. That's toxic stress. It's just, it doesn't stop. Okay, and it's too much for a long period. The trauma is the exposure and incidence of those events. They're emotionally disturbing, they can be life-threatening. There's a great book and information about how the body keeps score. Have any of you ever heard about that? Right? And so it's, again, why it's really important. The brain actually, when you see other traumatic incidences, do you know that your brain actually has to tell another part of your brain, you're not in that traumatic experience, you're okay? Did you guys know that? I find that fascinating. It's what keeps me not watching all of the crime that's on TV or on, you know, the murders and all of that that they put on, because that long term, my brain keeps saying, you're not in that, you're not in that. And it's exhausting. It's not something we consciously know our brain is actually doing. So turning off the TV and not watching things like that actually can be a great sign or a self-care. So then we get to complex trauma, which is, of course, when you have trauma in different ways. So it can be a financial trauma, it can be a sexual trauma, it can be a physical, emotional, mental, verbal. I don't want to, you all good? All right. And then chronic or persistent pain. So what we know often about chronic or persistent pain, let me get that out, it goes on for longer than 12 weeks despite medication or treatment. And many times the pain carries on for longer without any history of injury or operation. And that's how I think about it. No, that's all right. It's wonderful to have a child in the room. So it's understanding then, as we watch and experience ourselves as well as our children, we may be having, right, one type of stress where who we're interacting with may be experiencing something else. And if we think we know what they're going through, but it's a different type of adversity, or you know, it's going to be the A's and A's aren't going to match up. You're going to be trying to match an A to a C, and there's going to be a disconnection. And so what we know is a way to get over these things is from connection. It's from understanding one another. So sometimes, and you're going to hear me repeat some things tonight. Know that I repeat them on purpose, because what I've learned in life and as an educator is that we don't always hear things the first time. And also that sometimes I'm going to say something tonight that many of you may have already heard umpteen times, but tonight you might hear it a little bit different. All right. Any questions on those definitions? Is that helpful to talk about? Because I think it's one of those things like we all glance by like, oh yeah, we know that. And I think it's important to give a voice to it. All right, so how about secondary trauma or burnout, and what are these? So secondary trauma is when we are not experiencing the trauma, but we may be hearing about it. So for the last, let's see, since August 1st of 2011 until last Wednesday night, on an average of 4 times a week, I taught a course called the High Conflict Diversion Program. I have seen hundreds, probably thousands of parents over the years, and I've heard their stories. All right, I didn't experience their stories, I only heard them. That in itself is what secondary trauma is. It's hearing that traumatic experience. So when you guys hear that about your children, the children that you're with, even at the adults, it's understanding that you're experiencing secondhand trauma. So what do you do about it, right? Because it's something that you signed up. It's just part of the job, isn't it? So it's not, these aren't things that are bad or good. They simply are. It's just a matter of addressing, acknowledging, and knowing, okay, so now what do I do with it? So burnout is what I hit a couple of years ago, and I had to take a break. And burnout is when you can't do it anymore. You lose your passion. Like the work I do was so rewarding, but I was doing all I can, and with COVID shutting down, it's like I just needed that mental break. And so I had to take a mental break. And so it's actually what I've just done again is taken a break so I can refocus and go back in another time with a new program. So I share that part, not to make this about me. I think I share it more so you know I get this, I understand. I'm not, because I will tell you, everything I teach, I live every day of my life. I am not one of those people that come in and tell you to do something and I go home and do something else. I'm very passionate about my work. So this is the cost of caring. So this is when giving is no longer living. So you're giving out of yourself over and over again. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm now going to give us 5 minutes. The second sheet is this protocol. And what I want you to go through is do an assessment on yourself when it comes to understanding. Do you need another one? I see. Hold on. Jody, where are the extras? Thank you. I know that we have some extras here. So I'm just going to give you 5 minutes. Let me look at the time. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Those of you that are online, you should have received this, right, Jody? Thank you. So it's called the Professional Quality of Life Scale. And it's a lot of questions. Do you guys need one? Does anybody need a pen? Yeah. Okay. I can fix that one too. Oh, did I speak too soon? Jody, do you have any pens? I thought, oh, here we go. I was going to say, what did I do? So this part is really important. So if you take a minute for yourself, it's kind of like almost a self-care and completing it. Do you guys need a pen? Oh, you have one? Okay. You need another one? Mm-hmm. There's a second one there too if you want to. So for those of you that have finished to the 30, I encourage you to actually separate the sheets and copy in your answers. It'll be easier for you on the second page. I know. I know that's why if you get it matched up right there, it's a whole lot easier and quicker. Can't tell I've done it before, can you? Do you have one? Do you want one? I know, sorry. I know, and it's late in the day. You can use fingers and toes. And I meant to ask you to notice how you were feeling before you started this, because your feelings may have changed once you've gotten into it. If there's any questions online, please text them to Jody for us. I want to make sure all of you have your needs met as well. Mm-hmm. Yes, so that has to do with when they do research. Sometimes they actually ask the question as a negative, a reverse negative. So they ask you to, that's why they ask you to reverse it. But you add them all, right? Yes, so if you wrote 2, then you write down a 4. If you wrote 0. Right, I see that. Okay. But when it says total, you're adding your score for each one, right? You're adding up. So like for instance, on number 1, you would write the equal score. Correct. But on number 8, you would write just the score that you gave, right? Right. Okay. did you? Yes. Really? As a workshop or the course? Yeah? Okay. Oh, I'll have to get your name afterwards. I'm sure I remember. Yeah. Oh, nice. Very good. I actually. Yep, that's right. Hey, that's right. Exactly right. That's exactly right. Still tell this story. Yeah. This summer, I'm going to teach my 103rd course. Yes. Yeah. To our staff. I'm very excited. All right, so how's everybody doing? Still seeing some people. If you look up so I know if you're done, that helps me to just kind of see where we're at. I want to give everybody, I don't know about you. Would you have taken the time to have done this if we didn't stop and do it today? How many of you being honest? Thank you. Thank you. There's the whole reason why I actually allocate to do it. Because if you're anything like me, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it later. And then 5 months later, I find the paper and I do the first 5 and I'll finish it later. And yeah, I'm glad to know I'm not alone. Thanks. I appreciate that. All right. So for those of you that are done with it, I'm curious to know, what did you find out about yourself that you're willing to share with everyone else? Are you where you thought you were? Is there you having any aha moments to go, gosh, I just validated I really do need to be here tonight? Anybody want to share? I was consistent. You were consistent. Moderate. Okay. All right. So you came across as moderate. Okay. Anybody else want to share? Oh, good. So he said he scored moderate on the secondary traumatic stress, and which was higher than he expected to be. Okay, very good. How about you, your table? Anybody want to share? Okay, so you were moderate with compassion. Okay, very good. With compassion, very good. And thinking that she was going to be higher. Okay. I don't know about you, but a lot of times I get out of that guessing game, right? Where am I actually? And what I want you to notice as well is how you scored it tonight is based on how you're feeling tonight. All of you recognize that another day you could do this and you might get different answers, correct? Right? We've all just had some food. We're all in a quiet environment without the kids around for the most part, right? And so we may answer that in a different way. All right, so is there I'd like you to write down on your sheet, what is your takeaway? What is your takeaway? And the reason I encourage you to always write, you're going to hear me make suggestions to write something down. Does anybody know why that is? Why instructors will make a suggestion for you to write something down? We commit to it. We commit to it. We have a better chance of actually doing it later on. So it's instead of it just, especially when we're running at such a high level as you guys are, it's especially important to kind of stamp that in to say, okay, I'm going to commit to doing a little bit. And so tonight, you might get a lot of answers, a lot of things you want to implement. Please remember to just implement one at a time, or else you will cause yourself more stress and overwhelm. So find what feels right and do that first. Because what we know as a human body, we usually always do something we're comfortable doing before we do something that we're uncomfortable doing. Anybody notice if you have a big task, you tend to clean your house or do something else before you do that big task? It's the same in all aspects of life. All right, you'll do something fun with your children before you'll do something challenging. Yeah, very, very often, very common. All right, so have any of you ever watched this video? There's a video that's here that I can play, or I can act it out if you want instead. So I'm going to act it out. Mine isn't going to be as wordy as his, but it's the water bottle analogy. So I have a water bottle here. I'm going to open up this water bottle, and it is full of water. And if I go like that, I asked if it was okay, and they said it was okay. I did that. All of you don't panic to go, oh my God, I can't believe she just did that. Yeah, I got the approval from Jody first. All right. So why did the water come out of the bottle? So say it. Because the bottle was shaken. Not the answer. Yes. Ah, you have seen this before. No? Good job. All right. So did all of you hear what she said? Because there was water in the bottle is the reason the water came out. There's a lot of water in it. Okay? So the goal of this is to understand that I can take this bottle of water and I can shake it. And what happens? The water doesn't come out, does it? I shook it the same amount. The water doesn't come out. How does that apply to what we're talking about tonight?
When you're not filled up, you can't spill out.
Right. So in other words, if you are filled with anger, anxiety, right? When we get jiggled, that's what's going to come out. If we're filled with joy and happiness and contentment, when we jiggle, that's what's going to come out. We cannot change the jiggle. The jiggle is a natural occurrence that we're going to have in life. So it isn't about stopping the jiggle. It's about what we put inside of us. So I can tell you all day long, and I see people all the time trying not to jiggle. You'll go insane trying not to jiggle, you guys. But if what we have inside is that contentment and that ease, you'll be able to handle all those jiggles. And of course, the difference is getting them maxed out to the top. So good deal. All right, we got through that a whole lot quicker than watching that video. All right, so now let's just talk about compassion fatigue. So it is a condition characterized by emotional, physical exhaustion, leading to diminished ability to empathize or feel compassion for others, often described as the negative cost of caring. Does anybody feel like they've hit compassion fatigue in the past or present? Anybody relate to this? All right, thank you for your honesty, because I think that takes courage to just acknowledge that, and it's a lot more common than any of us believe it is. I will tell you, I just listened to Elba do this presentation for the 4th time in a year, and the lesson I took away was you don't stop your work, you stop how you're doing your work. And I was like, oh, right? So being able to know I do a ton of self-care, but there's still some other things that need to be implemented. And so that's what I get to share my experience and change there. So here are your risk factors. Yes, ma'am. Yes, very good. So, what she said is if you've never experienced compassion fatigue, you may not have been doing what you're doing now very long. And I will tell you, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I actually have a son who has got out of college and has been doing a job at 1,000 miles an hour. And I realized I modeled that for him. I taught him very well. And I'm like, oh, he's going to hit the wall one of these days. And it's really hard to watch. So I have, every time I'm doing self-care, I'm sharing all of that with him now. But it's just, for me, really an important part, and that we're going to talk about that in self-care, is that our children model what we do, and why it is so important that we get this. So what are the real, and she just brought it up, length and intensity of the exposure. Did you start this when you were young, right? Have you been a caregiver for a long time? Have you had enough self-care? Do you allow, or do you see self-care as being selfish like I did for years? I luckily got that change quite a few years ago, but lack of experience or training. And then, are you a first-line worker? Meaning, are you, instead of just being an adoptive foster parent as well, are you a nurse? Are you a first line in your regular job if you have a job? Because that will only double your impact. Oops. So, how does stress affect your brain? Do you guys, I'm going to think that you guys have had maybe some workshops about the brain. I try and keep it pretty darn simple, but it's understanding that cortisol and adrenaline, I talked earlier, it's like running, and you're running maybe from a tiger. If you're running from a tiger, you're not thinking about anything other than survival. All right? And so your body, actually, the cortisol shuts down the blood flow to the rest of the brain, so that it's going to your extremities. So all you do is run to get to a safe place. And here's the deal. We do that on a daily basis. It just looks different than that. We're running from other things that we don't even, are maybe not conscious that we're fearful for or from. So we want to look at serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamines. And what do those do? Well, good old, in case you don't know, dopamine is the rewarding chemical. So that's that whole thing of, oh, I completed it. So we do maybe your list and you check them off. The love hormone is all about connection. So it's people touching one another in a positive way. Serotonin, that mood stabilizer. What we know, of course, is if you have ADD or ADHD people, a lot of those medications are actually serotonin that are produced or given because they're missing it within the brain and the body. And I love that if you notice how you get them are either by meditating, and a lot of people say, I don't have time to meditate. Have you ever heard the saying, if you don't have time to meditate for 5 minutes, and you need to do it for 20? So just watch that one if you're ever with a person that meditates. Running and being in nature. Does anybody know why being in nature is so important to the human body? Anybody know why that is? It is relaxing, right? But it is also because you tend to, when you're in nature, you observe what is around you. So you're not worrying about the future, or you're not thinking about the past. You're thinking about what is right in front of you. And that is why nature so often is very important for ourselves as well as for our children. Absolutely. And then good old endorphins, which are the painkillers, which are laughing, exercising. I love that it says dark chocolate. And then essential oils. But it's also jumping around, dancing, moving the body. All right. So then we get into identifying compassion fatigue. This again is a little video. And this one goes into being able to talk about actually, here, let's see if I can play it. We'll do a test and see if this will go. Jody? That's the... I'll explain it. That one go? All right. So compassion fatigue is understanding the difference between sympathy and empathy. All of you know the difference. Nobody likes, most people don't like sympathy because a person usually shows pity towards the other person. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And there's this whole, oh, poor me type of attitude towards it, opposed to empathy is more of understanding and being able to say, I can't imagine what you've gone through. I have no words. I just know that I'm here to support you. Right? Or it's not saying, I know how you feel because I felt that way before. We tend to get that, but have any of you ever had somebody say to you, and in your head you think, no, you don't get it? Or am I the only one? No, you guys, right? So really, what I often say to myself is, in this moment, how would I want someone to speak to me? And those have been some of the greatest ways for me to get in touch with how I can connect with another person, or knowing the other person. What do I know works for another person? And sometimes that person needs to be given space. Sometimes it can be a hand on an arm. Sometimes it can be just sitting next to a person quiet. Right? It's very, very different, but making sure the video goes through. If you guys don't know Brene Brown, she's wonderful, but it's instead of saying, somebody says, well, my daughter flunked out of Spanish. Well, at least you have a daughter, that type of thing. Or your son got an A in math, that instead of being able to identify and being able to say, I hear you're disappointed, and that's a struggle for you to hear that your child struggled in that. All right. So now we're going to do the self-care assessment. This one's much shorter and much easier. And before you do it, I want to talk for a quick moment about self-care. So I happen to be the youngest of 6 girls. I became an aunt when I was 13 years old and began babysitting my nephew and then my niece, and then my sisters all there were 12 children born in a 10-year time span. So that was a lot of babies for me to watch. And so I learned really quickly how to love and take care of these children. And so when I became a mom, I was beginning to do that exact same role. And I can remember someone saying, you need to take care of yourself. And I thought, oh, you don't understand. You don't understand. I take care of my children. I take care of my husband. I take care of the house. I fall over at 10 o'clock so I can wake up tomorrow and do it all again. And then I went to get trained to teach redirecting children's behavior back in 2002, and I was reminded that our children do what we do. And I thought, do I want my children to take care of everyone else, fall over, so they can wake up tomorrow and do it again? And my answer was no. And I realized that if I didn't change my way, that was going to be the gift that I gave them that I did not want to give them. And so that's what changed my behavior, is knowing that they would repeat. So I would say, give them something good to repeat. So my mom clock, I used to say to my kids, my mom clock goes off at 8 o'clock when they go to sleep. And I said to them, I'm not going to have a party when you go to sleep, because for some reason when I was going to sleep, when I was little, I always thought they were going to have this little party when I left, and I wasn't invited to it. And I said, all I'm going to do is all the things I need to do so I can hurry and get to sleep myself, so I can take care of me. And so I will tell you today, my kids, luckily, I gave them alarm clocks. We went to good old Walmart years ago, and they picked out their alarm clocks, and they figured out when they needed to go to sleep to when they needed to get up. And they were able to, today, they still monitor. They're very hard workers, but they are very, very good about both their food and their sleep, because those are the two biggest in self-care. So I want you to take this and go through it, and let's just see how you're doing with your self-care. There aren't any wrong answers or right answers. So those of you online, if you'll take a minute and complete that second self-care, like I said, it'll be much simpler than the other one. How are we doing on time? So that battery came out. That doesn't help me. Jody, everybody doing okay online? All right. I remember the first time I did this, how could self-care be so many darn categories? How come it had to be so involved? It should be just straightforward. I'm interested to hear anybody online if they're willing to share what you're getting out of today, whether it's about the compassion fatigue portion. Love to hear any of your answers. Feel free to text those to Jody, not just your questions, but okay. Did you? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. That's the whole intention of it. That's a good thing. I'm just going to put those there for you. All right. So it encourages you to choose one from each area that you will actively work to improve. But I, of course, am now going to ask anybody if you're willing to share how did you guys score with your self-care? How are you doing? You doing all right? You see room for improvement? I'm hearing some giggles. Any gasps? What did you guys find? Anybody want to share something they want to do more of? Yeah. I need to say no when it's an inconvenience for you. Do you know really why that is so important? Anybody know why that is so important? Anybody know that if you do it and you keep that attitude, you build a resentment, which is a disconnection from with the other person. And then you're teaching our children to do things, right? So I can remember so often saying, absolutely, I'd be willing to do that, and then tell them when I am willing to do that, instead of just sometimes saying no as well. Although no, we are going to see is a full sentence. Anybody else? What did you find? Or anybody want to share ways that you're going to increase your self-care? Yes.
I realize that I am only good at the self-care things that I can do on my own in my bed after my children are in bed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me come.
If I were 5 in all these, I would not be good at my job, I would not be good as a husband, and I would not be good as a father.
Okay, so if you had number 5 in all of those, you would not be good as a human being, basically. Yes. So it is so true, because it's all about balance, isn't it? Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but the quicker I learned that I celebrate my strengths instead of my weaknesses, and I do that with other people that I love, that creates connection as well. So I've learned where I'm weak, and I have friends, and I will seek out those friends in my place that I'm weak. to have, and then I do the same with others. They know my strengths, and so we, create that village for one another. Anybody else willing to share what you guys found? All right. So again, I take time because sometimes we keep going and we don't take that time for ourselves. And that in itself right there is a form of self-care. So again, I encourage you to find ones that work for you and celebrate those. But like you're saying, know that nowhere does it say to do all of them. But it also, I don't know about you, but one week I can do one and another week I can do another one, right? So I can be creative as well. All right. So I'm going to go in. Let me just see my time. So I'm going to go in for a moment, and we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation if you're willing to go along with me. And we're going to look at when you get stressed, what do you stop doing that you know you shouldn't stop doing? Give me an example. Yes, go ahead. Sleep, absolutely. Another one? Communicate, okay. Anybody else? What else do you stop doing when you get stressed? What do you stop doing that you know you shouldn't stop doing? Folding your laundry. There you go. All right. Yes. Stop, right. So we're going to get to that because we're going to talk about what are the outcomes from our stop doing those. Anybody stop eating healthy? Start cutting corners? And some people stop exercising. Some people will sleep too much, sleep too little, or they'll work too much or too little. They'll become impulsive in their spending. Right? So, let's see. So this is the whole question, right? So I want you to jot down the ones that for you so that you can walk away and again, remember the next time I go to do that, I'm abandoning myself. Because remember that again, these are things that we model for our children. So then do you want your children to do what you do when you get stressed? If not, then, right, we do something different. So I've got a list here. Did not realize they're going to come one at a time, but there we go. I just said most of these. Let's see. Church is another one. Hobbies. Anybody stop doing those things that they love to do? Right? Stop going fishing, walking on the beach. Socializing. Some people go out too much, too little. Meditation. Time with your loved ones, family or friends. All right. So when this happens now, what does it create? Oh, the to-do list. I don't know why that. All right. So what does this create for you? So are any of these true for you? When you stop doing those, any of you get sadness, poor concentration, isolation, irritability? Any of you have excessive complaints? Basically, somebody can never do the right thing. Anybody have compulsive behavior, which is that impatience we just heard a minute ago? Anybody make assumptions or justifications? Anyone? Poor hygiene? Again, impulsive. What are any of the other ones that you guys experience when you have a lack of stress? Anybody get snappy with loved ones? Yeah? These aren't easy to look at. I realize that. I wasn't here to become your friend. I was here to give you some information tonight. So, sorry. But I know that if we're going to change behavior, we all know the only person. You realize I can't change any of your behavior. All of you realize that, right? Right. So I can't change anybody's behavior. If anybody's going to change, who's the person that's going to do that? You on the day that you decide to do it. And I've learned that if you try to get other people, especially close ones, to try and do it, usually can keep them from actually doing it if you don't have a loving, connected, positive relationship with another person. So, how about these? How about strained relationships? Weight loss or gain, blame others, bark commands. I call that parenting from the couch, right? Let me just tell you what to do over there while I'm sitting here. Illness, sickness, disease is very, very common as well. And then the last one is or poor decision making. That's another one. But long term, we get obesity, we get alienation. Who wants to be with a grumpy person? Yeah.
So, are you saying that stress causes all these in different people
It-
instead of the opposite way around? These causes stress.
Well,
Because I mean that's a question I have. It sounds
mhm.
like you're saying stress causes all these, when many of these actually cause stress.
That's right. It is one. It's the
It's not causal.
one can cause, like, so no, it goes back to when we get stressed, we tend to stop doing something that we know we should not stop doing. Like sleep, eat, right? Take care of ourselves. We work too much. We get to those extreme states because we're stressed. And when we're in that stressful state, we then turn around and don't necessarily make good decisions because we're stressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But they cause more stress.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, what do you do to get yourself out of that stressful situation? You go back to doing the things that you know you shouldn't have stopped doing, right? You go back to eating balanced, sleeping, right? Not working and excessive, right? All of those things that we know we shouldn't have given up, you go back to doing those. Because if you don't, then you end up down the road here. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is why self-care is so important. Because if you don't self-care, this is where you end up getting, which is nobody says, oh, that's where I want to go to. But it is, in fact, where we go as humans. Do all of us go there? No. Some of you have this down pat, and you're aware, and you do not allow yourself, right? You acknowledge your stress, and you make a change in your behavior. But many people aren't aware of it. So those of you that are not aware of it, here's some awareness for you. So it gets into chronic illness, disease. Again, why is this important? Because if you're dealing with people who have had a lot of trauma in their lives, when we don't model it for ourselves, for them, then we're not able to do what we're next going to talk about, which is building resiliency. That's going to be the solution for tonight. So you have to help yourself in asking yourself, how are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? And how can I help myself to feel better? And that goes back to, right, not giving up what you know works for you. And every single person in here is going to have a different answer to that. So, of course, it goes back partly to what can you control? The only thing we can control is what? Our own behavior. You can't even, in some ways, you can't control your thoughts, because have you ever been doing something and a thought pops into your head, right? But we can control how we respond to that thought, and then we can control the thoughts we have beyond from there. So understanding no is a complete sentence. I didn't want to skip by this one since we already talked about it. And then understanding what our medicine are for tonight can be the exercising, things that we've already spoken about, giving you a visual for it. I handed out to you a sheet, and this is just a takeaway for you on ways to nurture yourselves, is on one side, and the other one is an agreement, a caregiver's agreement of how you can take care of yourself. So again, it's just a takeaway so you have something to be able to focus on. And the caregiver's Bill of Rights. So the last part we're going to talk about is resiliency. Has anybody studied much on resiliency? And I'm sorry for those online, I just realized I didn't have this up here. Anybody studied much on resiliency? No? Okay, I've got a hand there. So resiliency is the ability to recover from or adjust easily to a misfortune or change. It also, the visual is, right, it comes something good that can come out of something that may be perceived as a negative, such as a crack in the sidewalk. So compassion resilience is when we go back to what he was speaking about. We maintain a balance between our mental, physical, emotional states, understanding that caring for ourselves first. So this doesn't mean that if your children have, a baseball game, that's when you book your hair appointment and you say, oh, I was told to, take care of myself first. Okay? I get people, I'm like, no, that's not what I taught. That was not what not at all what I meant here. It's a matter of being able to know that, right, we take care of ourselves, because we all know if the oxygen mask comes down, it goes on ourselves, because if we can't breathe and it can't operate, there's nobody else to operate either. And I know I did the same thing. No way, I'm always going to put it on my kid first, So again, the only reason I wrote this one out is because it's important to know in resiliency that there is an interaction between genes and experience. So all of us in our genetic makeup, it starts from birth of how much resiliency and ability we have to become resilient. Some people will go through the exact same situation. Some people will be okay, come through it. Others will be completely devastated, and that comes from genetics. All right, so it's important to know that people aren't being, wimps, or they're not being strong, whatever. There is a genetic portion to that. So it has to do with brain architecture, and if you guys don't know, Harvard has an incredible website with all kinds of short videos on understanding brain development in young children. Can't encourage you that enough. There's also Margot Sutherland has a great book on the science of parenting, which connects over science with behavior. If you don't know that one, it's another great book for parenting. All right, so I'm going to try and explain this as I show you a little video on it. So a fulcrum, which has to do with, again, how we're born, that fulcrum is like the middle of a teeter-totter. So for some of us, it may be in the middle. Some of it will be one side or another. The fulcrum is what plays that essential role in how we respond to the behaviors in which we're impacted by. So in resiliency, all of us are going to have negative experiences in our lives, and we're all going to have positive. It's just how life is, okay? We cannot, when negative things happen, we cannot remove them. They've happened. They're in the past. We cannot change that. The goal is, with resiliency, is to try to load it to the side so that we have more impact from positive experiences. So what first thing we do is we do our best to stop from our children or ourselves experiencing any more negative situations. And then what we do, we focus on the positive. So that's why I always say, you don't focus on why they fell down. You focus on how they get back up. What did they learn from falling down? And I remember my son learned it. I learned not to wear flip-flops and run over the hose because I trip on it. Okay, that's the important part he learned. He didn't learn, Actions have consequences. So guess what? He didn't do that anymore. But so often our kids come home from school and we don't ask them, you know, why did you hit Conrad? I know you have a really good reason, because he annoyed me. I told him 4 times not to do it, and he wouldn't listen to me, so I hit him. Okay. So now I had to say, all right, so tomorrow, and he, of course, was always doing it when the teacher wasn't looking. Okay. I got it. Now, tomorrow, Conrad might do the exact same thing. What's your game plan when you get to that same situation? Not to hit him and have a different outcome. That's right. We got to give them the options there. Yeah. That's right. Gotcha. So she said that she believes that I may not agree with what she has to say, and she has a lot of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder in her family. I'm sorry, I'm repeating. They asked me to do that for the online people. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what she just said was that some children do not learn from their experiences, and they will do it over and over and over again. And I want to verify that that is absolutely true. When you have a brain-based injury, 100% true. Very true. And thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. All day long, I will agree with that. And yeah, absolutely. So we want to stop those negatives. And so what you're saying and you're validating for me is we need to give those kids even more positive supports. And what do those positive support? We got to increase them. What do they look like? They look like things that you have already seen, so that we can shift that fulcrum. We want to shift it so that we give them resources. We give them one for ourselves. This is building resiliency, remember, for ourselves in this, but talking about making sure that we're able to take care of our own ability to pay our bills, right? Look at those stressors and focus on the people that we can count on, our genetics, the resiliency, our life story, and looking at those 6 domains. So this is what you guys, I'm sure, hear as you build your community. What is important for your children and for yourself? Well, to have your own goal, to have your emotions regulated, learn to take care of those, to make sure you have problem solving and resourcefulness, the nutrition and sleep, you get the persistence, the tenacity, right? So when your kids don't do it for the 5th time, you just know you're going to have to do it 20 times. You're going to have to do it possibly the rest of their lives. It's just how they are kinetically made. And then looking at those protective factors of connecting them with other people in the community, building your own village, getting each other's numbers so that when you're spent, you can call somebody else and say, I'm spent, and be able to talk about it, right? I'm sure you guys already do that, correct? Big time of being able to have and get a buffer for yourselves. So what is your takeaway, and what are you guys committed to doing different based on tonight? I encourage you again, write down something that feels like a positive takeaway for yourself. And then asking you, do you have any questions? That last part makes sense of the importance of building our resiliency, because if we don't build our resiliency, we're not going to be able to build our children's resiliency. Right? And where does that begin? It begins back at self-care, which is why I covered that first. So I want to just give you guys some information. I have a workshop coming up it's free, financial planning for families with special needs. So I have flyers, I believe, that I gave out to everyone is in your packet there. That one's free. It's being put on by a financial advisor and his cohort. Then we also have, so this one is for you to share if you have any professional clinician that you're working with that is diagnosing children 0 to 3, and they may not actually be using what's called the DSM-5, that is for 0 to 3. So there are many clinicians out there that use the book that is actually for ages 6 to adults on our young children. Many of them are not even aware there is a DSM-5 for birth to 5. So since you guys are seeing those individuals, I share that information. I have an early bird until next week on the 15th. But in other words, if you know somebody that could really use that's doing some assessment, I ask you to share it. This is the only training that I can do, only individuals in the state of Florida. And then the last one I have, if you've not attended it, we offer it on a quarterly basis. It's free. It's the Intro to FASD, which is Understanding Brain-Based Difficulties. And again, if you're not familiar and you need your child, want to have your child assessed through our clinic, has anybody had their children assessed through the Florida Center? Thank you. Okay. So if you need that, that service is there, and it is free. You don't have to go through insurance. It's a free service that we offer. All right. And that's it. How did I do on timing? Look at that. Pretty darn good. Where's Jody? There you are. All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna pray for us. I got a couple more announcements, and then we'll cut you guys loose. So, God, thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight and just to be challenged to take care of ourselves. We've all stepped into this world of foster care and adoption because we care deeply about others. But to be challenged tonight to remember that we're part of the equation in our families. I pray that you would help us to take one of those takeaways and just to implement it, even if it's small. I know a lot of times to think about taking care of ourselves seems it's one of those easier said than done kind of things. But we pray that you would somehow supply a few more minutes or reprioritization of how we're spending our time so that we can be the best caregivers that we can for our kiddos. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, if you don't mind, open up your phones real quickly. You should have an email that came from me in the last hour and a half or so. Lots of great information in there. There's also a really short 3-question survey. You can just tap on it, click that link. We just want to know that the content that we're providing is valuable to you, that you're learning about resources, and that you're connecting better within this space. I do think that's such a huge part of self-care, is knowing that you've got other people that you can lean into. And if you don't have that, I'd love to talk to you tonight and introduce you to some people who can help you feel part of that community. The other thing I forgot to mention earlier, I just posted it today to Bridge Life's Facebook page. Many of you are involved in churches that are asking us for some trauma-informed training for the youth and children's ministry workers. And so we're really excited to be partnering with One Big Happy Home this summer, June 24th. They're going to do a full-day training that's geared specifically for youth and children's workers in churches. And we would love to extend an invitation to your church. You can tag, you can share, you can connect us. It's up to 10 people per church. They get a day-long training, lunches included. And then they also get a year of resourcing and videos and content that will help them to be able to better serve kids from hard places when they show up on a Wednesday night youth group or on Sunday morning. So we'd love for you to know more about that as well. If you need a certificate, those are just out the door where you signed in, so be sure to grab those on your way out. And if you brought kiddos, we just ask that you pick them up by 8. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys next month.